This graph shows how frequently the words healthcare as two words versus healthcare as one word have been used in American English books since 1950. This data is from the Google Ngrams viewer, which allows you to analyze data from the entire Google Books corpus. A corpus is just a technical term for a database of language in use. It comes from the Latin word corpus, meaning body. We still talk about a body of works, and a corpus is a body of text, a body of language in use. By the way, this is part 4 of my series on corpus linguistics. So we can learn a couple things from this graph. First off, healthcare became an increasingly common topic of discussion starting around 1965 when Medicaid and Medicare were introduced. And then the spike in 1993 corresponds to the discussion of healthcare reform under Bill Clinton. So for starters, corpus data can give you insights into cultural trends, which is pretty cool. You'll also notice that the one-word version of healthcare has gradually become more frequent over time. And in fact, in British English, it's already more frequent than the two-word version. This is a good indication that for a lot of people, the word healthcare has now become a compound word, a single kind of unified chunk that they just memorize as one piece, rather than this analyzable phrase of a noun modifying another noun. Healthcare as two words and healthcare as one word now mean different things. The first typically refers to caring for one's health, while the second now refers to the societal institutions we have in place for providing medical care. And since written language tends to lag behind spoken language by a couple decades or even a generation, it's no surprise that we don't see healthcare becoming one word until a few decades after the more increased frequency of discussion of the word. But here's the thing that's really cool about all this. It illustrates one of the most important principles of linguistics, which is that language optimizes for what speakers use it to do. This is the direct result of how our cognition works. Our brains become more efficient at a task the more we do it. So instead of having to parse the two-word phrase healthcare every time we hear it, our brains just store it as a single chunk with its own meaning, independent of the meaning of the individual words. This is also why the most frequent words in a language tend to also be irregular. With regular words, you memorize a pattern and you apply that pattern to new words. For example, with most nouns, we make it plural by adding an S to the end. But what about words like man and woman? The plural of those are irregular. But since man and woman are so frequent, it doesn't make sense for us to have to think about and apply a pattern every time we use them. They're so frequent that we can just memorize the singular and plural without having to think about that pattern. That's way more cognitively efficient than having to do that processing every time we use these highly frequent words. We also see this cognitive processing efficiency in how long words are. Across languages, if a word is more frequent, it tends to be shorter than less frequent words. So words that we use all the time tend to be shorter, which makes it easier to use them. So these insights about frequency and cognitive efficiency are exactly the kind of things that linguists can learn by using corpora. If you want to learn more about how language works, give me a follow.